Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, November 24th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll talk with Variety's Rebecca Rubin about the big box office haul for Wicked for Good. She details the risky decision that Universal Pictures took to make Wicked a two-part release 1 year apart. It has paid off. And then Jennifer Maz gives us a mood report at HBO after she spent some quality time with Casey Bloys and his team. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Billie Eilish has set the date for her Hit Me Hard and Soft concert movie release. It's a 3D extravaganza co-directed by James Cameron. It's coming to theaters via Paramount Pictures on March 20th. There are two significant passings to note this morning. German character actor Udo Kier died on Sunday at age 81. He was a fixture in Palm Springs in his later years. And Jimmy Cliff, the incredible musician who helped define reggae in the 1960s and 70s. He's known for the hit The Harder They Come and for starring in the 1972 movie of the same name. He was also 81. My favorite Jimmy Cliff song is an upbeat number called Better Days Are Coming. Here's a clip in tribute to an incredible artist who was the pride of Jamaica. Now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. If it's Monday, we're talking box office with Rebecca Rubin. There's no hunting around for a lead this weekend. Wicked for Good did its job and brought traffic back to the multiplexes. Rebecca Rubin, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
By the time that we got to the weekend, I know you from your tracking and your conversations, you knew it was just going to be a matter of how big this movie was going to open. Rebecca, was this in line with your expectations?
There was no doubt that Wicked for Good was going to be huge. The question was just where that final number was going to end up. And so opening weekend, the movie made $150 million in North America and $226 million globally. So by that account, it is officially the biggest domestic and global opening for a Broadway adaptation, beating the record set by the first half of Wicked, which came out a year ago.
A new mark for the main stem. That is a very big international haul. And from what I understand, Universal was really focused on opening big internationally.
Right, because the first film was pretty much big everywhere, but it over-indexed heavily in North America, where around 65% of ticket sales came from. And that's partially because Wicked is more popular in the States and it's not as recognizable a property overseas. And so far, it's had a bigger debut overseas, which is pretty common for now that it's an established property. But it's definitely a good sign that interest there has grown since the first film.
$150 million domestic, just hands down. People who went to the movies went to see Wicked for Good. This was just a four-quadrant smash.
When you get to these numbers, $150 million domestically and over $200 million globally, it is resonating mostly everywhere. But what stood out to me actually was the two parts of it all. A few years ago, when Universal announced that they were going to split Wicked into two parts, a lot of people, myself included, were very skeptical about what that decision would look like because it's already risky to split a movie into two, and musicals are a very polarizing genre. And most of the recent musicals, a lot were made by Universal. Cats is one, Dear Evan Hansen. These movies were not connecting with a wider audience. And so it was a huge gamble on Universal's part to not just need one big budget musical to succeed, but two to succeed a year apart. And so it's very encouraging now to see that, at least financially speaking, it feels like that decision has paid off because they have another huge opening on their hands.
The fact that it was this two-parter movie tied to this beloved musical did make it feel more like a movie-going event, which is, as you've talked about, is something that studios really need to think about to give people that motivation. Large format screens, were they a big factor in driving box office for Wicked for Good?
Yes, we have continued to see these premium large formats, IMAX included, accounting for a big portion of box office, and that was no exception here with Wicked for Good globally. Just in IMAX, the movie made $25 million, and that's not including the Dolby screens or 4DX. There were some very funny videos on social media on TikTok of people who unknowingly went to 4DX screenings and saw Elphaba swooping in with her broom, and they were quite startled. But audiences are looking for experiences like that you're not getting on your TV screens at home. And so this is just another example of a movie that people are wanting to see in these different formats.
Did anybody else try to open anything as counter-programming to Wicked for Good?
There were two new releases that did not quite make a dent on box office charts. One of them was Searchlight's Rental Family, which is a comedic drama that stars Brendan Fraser, and it's his first big role post his Oscar win in The Whale. And it opened in fifth place. It made $3 million from roughly 2,000 North American theaters. And so not the biggest start, but something to note is that reviews and audience scores were really positive. It has an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it got an A cinema score from moviegoers. This is the time of year where movies tend to leg out if audiences are actually responding to them.
Rebecca, what would you consider to be good for a hold next weekend domestically for Wicked for Good?
Well, the Thanksgiving holiday is coming up, and so that always kind of skews the metrics because it's a very popular time to go. What we might typically see as like a 50% hold is going to be much stronger this weekend as families are together for the holidays, kids are out of school, and so I think it'll be much bigger of a weekend than it would be if it was not around this Thanksgiving holiday. But that is actually part of the reason why Universal chose to release the movie around Thanksgiving, because they're getting two bites of an apple here, and they did the same thing with the first Wicked, which was having it open the week before Thanksgiving. So they have a huge weekend before Thanksgiving, and then they have another huge weekend during Thanksgiving. I think the first movie dropped maybe 50%, which is pretty good because it had such a big opening. And
Right, given where they start, that's a
yeah, it's
pretty good
pretty
hold, right?
average. And so we're going to see a similar matchup actually last Thanksgiving to this Thanksgiving. There was Wicked, and then there was a big animated sequel from Disney. Last year it was Moana 2, which was a massive hit and ended up making over $1 billion. This year is Zootopia 2, and again, it's primed to be another huge hit for Disney Animation. And so it really shows that if there are two movies that people want to see, they can both succeed.
We already have a lot to look out for next week. As always, Rebecca, thank you for telling us what's going on at the Turnstiles.
Thanks for having me.
And now let's get a temperature check on HBO from Jennifer Maz, who attended last week's HBO programming presentation in New York. HBO has a packed slate for 2026. They'll be busy with high-profile originals rolling out across the year. The best part of these press events are not the fire hose of facts and figures and tidbits. It's the chance to read the body language and assess the mood of leaders. HBO's programming presentation was held in New York at the company's headquarters in Hudson Yards, and it happened to fall on the same day that CEO David Zaslav and his team gathered elsewhere in the building to consider bids for selling the company. You can't make this stuff up. Jennifer Maz, thank you very much for joining me.
Happy to be back.
You were down there on Thursday at Hudson Yards as Casey Bloys, HBO's fearless leader, met the press and gave a presentation about what's coming for HBO. We love those kind of presentations. You always get a lot of news, but you also get get a chance to take the temperature at HBO. What was the mood? How did you read the body language of the folks at HBO right now?
And it was definitely a light atmosphere. People were in good spirits. And Casey opened with a joke about, I brought you here today to tell you who's going to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. And so, he definitely acknowledged this was the exact day that the bids were due for parent company Warner Brothers Discovery. And he was like, I'm here to focus on HBO. And so he did. There was a Q&A portion at the end, so he did field our questions about what that looks like. He answered very specifically, is he worried about his job? Is he worried about the HBO brand? He said no. And he said no, and he said he's been through this enough times, and he told his staff this the other day in a town hall, which is just, we have to keep focusing on making good programming, and that's all we can do. We have no control over this. And he made the point, like I said, because Casey's been through this several times, that this could take a year to a year and a half, and then closing time as well. So like he understands that this cannot impact them every day moving forward. They have to keep doing what they're doing. And what they're doing is they showed us a lot of really good content that's coming out next year.
This presentation was held at their headquarters in Hudson Yards, but where? Was it an auditorium, a conference room?
So we were on the third floor and we were in a screening room. It was probably several dozen journalists and then HBO executives.
Gotcha. Well, while that was happening, also at Hudson Yards, David Zaslav and his top lieutenants, most of them named Bruce or David, were there, and they were, in fact, receiving the bids that I understand mostly came in electronically. So in terms of the programming, what stood out to you?
They give us just like a full roadmap, which is very impressive because I think the past few years when they've done something like this, they have a few things they're really proud of, have a general idea of what's coming. This is a really stacked year coming up, and it's just one thing after another. So there will be the new season of House of the Dragon coming out in the summer. I did Seven Kingdoms. That's the prequel for Game of Thrones. That's coming out in January. And both those shows were renewed that day. They wanted to make a big splashy announcement. They renewed those. They renewed Tim Robinson's The Chair Company. They renewed I Love LA. And then in the footage they showed us, we got first looks at a whole bunch of shows coming up. Not the new Harry Potter show yet, because they're still filming that. Casey did talk about it a little bit, and that the plan there is also to shoot those seasons as close together as possible to get ahead of those kids getting too big for the parts. We got to see a look at Lanterns, the Greg Berlanti Green Lantern show that has been in works for a while. So one of the interesting things was seeing so many shows that we've been writing about for years now, some of these pre-COVID that have taken this long to come to fruition.
I have to ask you, you are the biggest Tim Robinson fan I know. How does The Chair Company, how does this show stack up in his canon? I'm sure you're happy that it's renewed.
It's really good. Now, I'm partial to I Think You Should Leave. Similar kind of humor, different format, obviously. So I want to make sure, hearing that it's renewed, very exciting. Worried we won't get more I Think You Should Leave if he's busy on Chair Company, but it's really good. It's top tier Tim Robinson.
As you noted in your story, this time around, they are very drama heavy, but this time around, they are putting an emphasis on comedy, trying to restock the larder there. And interesting too, Rachel Sennett is the star and creator of I Love LA, seems the epitome of 2026 talent, somebody who birthed her career on social media and seems to be like she's hit the pop culture radar all of a sudden in the last 6 months in a way, and she seemed very adept at keeping herself in the conversation.
She did, to the point where they brought her, actually, I forgot about this part. She was in a brief Q&A in the middle of it. They brought her out and interviewed her for us up front, and it was a little time for them to talk about it. She was very excited, obviously, and it was a cool thing to see them feature her and feel like this is an important thing to devote time to.
Every generation of bi-coastal 20-somethings gets its representative series on HBO. Let me ask you, was there much discussion of the HBO Max half of the house?
Actually, a good portion was devoted to that, because one thing that Casey brought up, and I know it's something that he was also transparent about, like, we haven't actually answered this question in a definitive way, which is, what is a Max original? Now, he's answered it many times over the years, but this time he was like, it's been nebulous and I haven't had a great answer. And the answer now is very much The Pit. The Pit is what a Max original is and should be moving forward.
The Pit bagged an upset Emmy drama series win for the company.
Yes. There was a slide that had the number of Emmys that they had up there. So he pointed to that as an example. He wants Max Originals to be larger episode counts, to come out every year. They're very proud of that Pitt is coming back in January. And that is such an interesting, we're back to TV, right? We're back to having a show.
It sounds like network television.
Yes. So that's, probably the best answer. Max is network television. That's what it's going to be moving forward. They want to have more episodes. They want it to be procedural. They want it to be coming out at a consistent pace so that fans know. And obviously that also helps reduce churn.
And they love the Pit so much, they're about to trot it out on TNT.
Casey talked about that a little bit in terms of bringing in a new audience. And then also you can't overstate the power of having those linear networks for stuff like that. They're like, yeah, let's try it. We'll see what happens.
We've seen this with Hulu and ABC are experimenting more along those lines. It seems like such a natural decision. And hello, Windows historically have been very important to the whole making money part with content. So they're rediscovering Windows. So there's new hope in Mudville. You say that they didn't show any Harry Potter, but what did they say? I'm sure everybody was hanging on every word.
Yes, they are filming right now. They've released a few first look images. We know what Harry looks like. We know what Hagrid looks like. But Casey did give an update, which is that they're in production on season 1, but they're also writing season 2. And they are working through, if we're looking at a Max format, totally different shows, but they clearly want it to release in every year. They're going to have a new season out and they're doing it this way. So he was like, I don't see it being a world in which we finish filming season 1 on Friday and start season 2 on Monday. There'll be a break, but they're definitely prioritizing getting back in there as soon as possible. I see this show probably filming year round for several years.
It's a huge undertaking and not like the fans are obsessive or anything. Jenny, I am so glad that we can summon team coverage for these kinds of things on both coasts and many other locales. As always, I appreciate your time and your reporting.
Thank you.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Variety's 100 Best Comedies of All Time list is out today. We'll hear more about that from the people who assembled it later this week. ESPN will pay tribute to its late anchor Stuart Scott with a 30 for 30 documentary. Booyah, A Portrait of Stuart Scott, premieres December 10th. Scott died in 2015 at the age of 49. And finally, we have established a new email address to receive feedback from listeners on our 3 primary podcasts, Daily Variety, Strictly Business, and Award Circuit. All of us who work on podcasts would love nothing more than to get some constructive feedback from listeners on what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and what you think you should be covering. So please drop us a line at podcasts@variety.com. That's podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Mara Brock Akil. The veteran series creator and showrunner received the Norman Lear Achievement Honor at the Producers Guild Awards on February 28th. I've had the pleasure of knowing and covering Mara Brock Akil for many years. Truly, nobody deserves this accolade more. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Rebecca Rubin and Jennifer Moz. Stick, snakes, hig, pigs. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety. And don't forget to send us feedback at podcasts@variety.com.